My girlfriend's family called me pathetic and not her type, but when I walked away with more than they ever had, I knew they'd. So here's the deal. I never thought I'd end up here, but I guess we all have our breaking points. I'm 28, and my girlfriend, Kelsey, is 26. We've been dating for over a year now, and I thought things were going pretty smoothly. Everything was great until her family started getting more involved. To give you a bit of background, I'm a pretty laid-back guy. I'm not into flashy things. I don't try to impress people, and I'm definitely not about putting on a show. I work a steady job in tech, making a decent enough living. It's not a high-flying CEO kind of salary, but I get by, and I've always been content with that. Kelsey's family, though? They're a different story. Kelsey's parents, Linda and Frank, come from money. Not just your average comfortable middle-class type of wealth, but the kind where they own multiple properties, have fancy cars, and regularly travel to places most people would only see on Instagram. Then there's her older brother, Adam. He's a bit of a tech bro, always talking about his startup ideas and the next big thing he's going to invest in. He's one of those people who loves the idea of disrupting the market, but is really just trying to climb the ladder of social status. Kelsey always said that her family was a little much, but she never wanted to put too much distance between them, especially since they were close. I wasn't sure what to expect the first time I met them. Kelsey had been dating guys before, but I guess none of them had quite made it far enough to really meet the family. I walked into their home, which was basically a mansion with an open floor plan that made it feel like you were in a luxury hotel. The first thing that threw me off was how Kelsey's parents looked at me, like I didn't belong. Linda, in particular, kept eyeing me with this polite but cold smile, like I was some kind of experiment she couldn't quite figure out. Frank didn't say much at first, but his judgmental glances spoke volumes. Adam, on the other hand, immediately sized me up and made a few offhand comments about my job. Tech? Huh? Nice. But what's your endgame? You know, most guys in your field don't exactly. Make it big, he said with a slight smirk, as if I hadn't heard that 100 times before. It didn't bother me too much at first, but as the dinner went on, I began to sense something more under the surface. It started with little comments. Linda asked if I was planning on settling down soon, and when I mentioned I had a few personal projects I was working on, she gave this little laugh and said, "Well, I hope you're not still living in that tiny apartment. Kelsey deserves more than that." Frank chimed in with something about how people in tech can get pretty lost in their work, making it sound like I was some kind of aimless, career-obsessed guy with no real direction. But the real kicker came when Adam started digging into me more. We were talking about future plans, and I mentioned that I didn't see the point in rushing things, working on myself, saving a little, and taking it one step at a time. Adam didn't let it go. "You know, Kelsey could do better than someone like you," he said, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "She's got a lot of potential. Why waste it on a guy who can barely afford his rent?" Kelsey didn't say anything at first, but I could see her face turn red. I could tell she was uncomfortable, and I wanted to let it slide because I didn't want to make a scene. But that comment, it stung. I wasn't going to let Adam get away with it. I smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "I guess you're right, Adam. Kelsey could do a lot better than me. But the difference is, she actually sees me for who I am, not what I have or don't have," I said, trying to keep my tone even. Kelsey's eyes shot over at me, a mixture of surprise and admiration. Adam looked like he was about to retort, but Frank intervened, making it awkwardly clear that they were all very much aligned in their opinions of me. I was a nice enough guy, but not Kelsey's type. At that moment, I realized something. They didn't just think I was beneath them, they were actively trying to undermine my relationship with Kelsey. The dinner ended on a weird note. Kelsey apologized profusely on the way back, but I could tell this was something that had been building up for a while. It wasn't just me they were doing this to, it was anyone who didn't fit into their perfect little world. For a while after that, I kept my distance from her family. Kelsey was always trying to make it better, but I could tell she was torn. The pressure from her family was intense. It wasn't even subtle. They were constantly pushing her to do better, like I was some kind of obstacle in her path to a more successful life. But here's the thing, I didn't care. I didn't care what they thought of me. I didn't care that they thought I wasn't good enough for Kelsey. The truth is, I didn't even realize how much I'd been letting their opinions weigh me down until I started taking a hard look at my own life and what I wanted out of it. Fast forward a few months. I've been working on a side project, something I'd always been passionate about but never had the time or space to fully invest in. I poured my energy into it, and after a lot of sleepless nights and hard work, things started falling into place. I had a few small wins, some unexpected opportunities, and before I knew it, my side project was turning into something much bigger than I'd imagined. I was no longer just scraping by in a tech job. I was building something that had potential to change the game. The moment things really changed, though, was when Kelsey's family invited us over again, a few months after that awkward dinner. This time, I was coming with some serious baggage, new business deals, a growing reputation in my field, and a whole new outlook on life. I had everything I needed to prove to them I wasn't pathetic or not her type. But what I didn't realize was how much I was about to blow up their perfect little world. When we walked in, I could already feel the tension. Adam was being his usual condescending self, but now there was something different about him. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't the same guy I was before. Maybe it was the fact that I had actual accomplishments to talk about. Or maybe it was the way I casually dropped the news that I just signed a lucrative deal that would change everything for me. And let me tell you, the look on their faces when I said that, it was priceless. But it wasn't just about that deal. It was the fact that, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the guy they could push around. I wasn't the underdog anymore. And for the first time in Kelsey's life, she was starting to realize that, too. When I dropped the news about the deal, the whole atmosphere in the room shifted. For a second, it felt like everything froze. Kelsey's parents exchanged glances, clearly trying to process what I just said. Adam's face went from his usual smug expression to something a little more confused. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he tried to figure out how to respond. But it wasn't the immediate reaction that stuck with me, it was the way Kelsey looked at me. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't just love or admiration. There was something more, something like respect. Like I wasn't just the guy she was dating anymore. I was someone who had his own life, his own success, and his own path. I could feel the weight of her family's judgment, though, like they were trying to process the fact that this guy they'd written off, the guy they'd called pathetic and not her type, had something they didn't. I wasn't trying to rub it in their faces, honestly. I was still processing all the changes myself. But I think that's what hurt them the most. They weren't used to people saying, "I'm good enough for your daughter, and I'm not going to apologize for it." Kelsey's family didn't take kindly to being challenged, especially when it came to their carefully constructed world. Adam was the first to try and recover from the shock. He cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair. "All right, so you're doing well for yourself. That's good," he said, but his tone was flat. "I mean, tech stuff is all the rage now. It's just hard to know if it's a real, long-term thing. You know how that goes, right?" I nodded, keeping my calm. I could see that he was trying to find a way to twist it back into something he could control, but I wasn't going to let him. "Yeah, I get that. I think a lot of people feel that way when they don't understand how things are changing. But I'm not looking for anyone's approval. I'm just doing what I love." Kelsey was silent next to me, her hand on my knee. I could feel her tension in the way she was holding it. I knew this wasn't easy for her. Her family's approval meant everything to her, and I knew she wasn't ready for them to see the side of me that had been quietly growing in the background. Her mom, Linda, finally spoke up. "I just don't understand why you didn't tell us about all of this sooner," she said, her voice still cordial but with an undercurrent of irritation. "It's nice that you're finally finding some success, but Kelsey deserves someone who can provide for her now, someone who's been established, who has real security. All this startup stuff doesn't make me feel confident about the future." It wasn't the first time Linda had made comments like that, but this time it felt different. She was clearly holding on to her ideal vision of what Kelsey should have, and that vision didn't include someone like me, someone who had been scraping by, and who wasn't following the traditional route of climbing a corporate ladder. Kelsey glanced at me, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wasn't going to say anything to her mother, at least not in that moment, but I could feel her pulling back a little. I wanted to say something to defend myself, to defend us, but I could tell that it wasn't the time. Her family was a whole different world, one that wasn't going to just accept me overnight. Frank, her dad, sat quietly throughout most of this, but he wasn't silent for long. He took a slow sip of his drink and then looked directly at me. You know, Kelsey's been a little distracted lately. She's been really focused on, well, you, he said, his voice a mix of disapproval and disappointment. She's smart, and she's got potential. I just don't want to see her throwing it all away on someone who's still figuring things out. I felt the anger bubbling up inside me, but I kept it in check. I wasn't going to let them get to me. Not anymore. You don't know the first thing about me, Frank, I said, my voice calm but firm. And you don't get to decide what Kelsey does with her life. She's not throwing anything away. She's choosing to be with me, and I think that speaks for itself. There was a brief silence as everyone processed my words. Kelsey squeezed my hand, but she didn't speak. Adam shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction things were going. He cleared his throat again, but this time it wasn't in that condescending way he usually did. This time, it was almost like he was trying to change the subject, to salvage whatever he could of the evening. So, he started, awkwardly glancing at Kelsey, then back at me. What exactly is this deal you're talking about? I mean, if it's really as big as you say, maybe we could get in on it. I've got a few investors who might be interested in. I didn't let him finish. I could tell he was angling to turn this into some sort of business opportunity for himself, and I wasn't about to play along. I'm not interested in having you get in on it, Adam, I said, my tone more biting now. This isn't a game for me. This is my life, my hard work. I don't need anyone's help, least of all yours. There was another long, awkward silence. Frank's face turned red, Linda's expression was unreadable, and Adam just looked confused, like he was suddenly out of his depth. Kelsey's hand tightened around mine, and for a split second, I wondered if she was regretting bringing me into this situation at all. But then something surprising happened. Kelsey spoke up. I'm tired of this, she said, her voice clear and surprisingly firm. I'm tired of you guys making him feel like he's not good enough. You've been doing this for months now, and it's not fair. I'm with him because I choose to be, not because of what he has or doesn't have. He's everything I need. And if you can't accept that, then maybe I need to rethink whether this family is a place I want to keep coming back to. Her words hung in the air, and I could see the shock on her family's faces. For the first time, she wasn't trying to mediate or make peace. She was standing up for me, standing up for us. But even then, I knew this wasn't over. Her family wasn't going to just accept things. Not like that. They were going to fight back. The tension in the room had shifted, but it wasn't the kind of shift that brought peace. No, it was the kind of shift that set everything up for a bigger blow. Kelsey had just said the words I'd been silently waiting to hear, and while it felt like a small victory in the moment, I knew the battle was far from over. Her family wasn't just going to walk away and let her stand up to them. Her father, Frank, looked like he was about to explode. I could see the vein in his neck pulse with anger as his grip tightened around his glass. Linda, her mother, stared at Kelsey like she had just committed some unforgivable crime. And Adam, he just sat there, jaw clenched, silently seething. Don't talk to us like that. Frank's voice was low, but there was an edge to it that made it clear he was barely holding back. You don't get to tell us how to behave in our own home, Kelsey. This man you're with, he's nothing but a distraction. A phase. Kelsey stood her ground, her back straight, eyes locked with her father's. I'm not a child anymore, Dad. I can make my own decisions, and I've chosen him. If you don't respect that, then I don't think I need to keep coming back to this house or playing these games with you. Her words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The silence in the room was suffocating, but what followed was worse. Linda finally broke the silence, her voice sharp and cold. You think you're some big shot now, don't you? She sneered, looking at me as though she was trying to tear me down with just her gaze. Just because you signed one deal doesn't mean you're anything special. We've seen countless people like you come and go. You're nothing but a flash in the pan. And Kelsey deserves someone who actually has real security, not some guy who gets lucky once in a while. It felt like a slap in the face. The condescension in her tone was suffocating. But worse than that was the way she tried to belittle everything I'd worked for. They'd never seen the late nights, the sacrifices, the endless grind. To them, it was all just luck. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept it in check. Kelsey was standing up for me, for us, and I wasn't going to let them tear me down in front of her. But I wasn't just going to let it go, either. I looked at Linda directly, not flinching. I don't need to prove anything to you, I said quietly. You can call me lucky all you want, but that's all it will ever be to you, just luck. What I've built, what I'm building, isn't a fluke. I'm not going anywhere. Adam scoffed from across the table. You're really going to sit here and talk like you're some kind of success story? You're just another guy pretending to be something you're not. I looked at him, and for a brief moment, I saw it, the insecurity behind his arrogance. Adam had always been the golden boy in his family, the startup guy, the one with the flashy connections and the fake confidence. But in that moment, it was clear that I was the one who had the edge now. And that's when it hit me. These people, Kelsey's family, had been trying to control her, trying to mold her into their perfect vision of success. They saw her as a prize, a piece of their social status, and they didn't care who got hurt in the process. They weren't just judgmental or overbearing. They were toxic. And it wasn't just that they didn't approve of me. They didn't approve of Kelsey having a mind of her own. They thought they could dictate her life, and now that she was pushing back, they were furious. Kelsey wasn't backing down, and I wasn't either. We didn't need their approval. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't just going to let them keep attacking us, pretending that they were the ones with the power. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them make Kelsey feel small. The idea started to form in my mind, a way to make them feel the consequences of their actions. I wasn't going to get into a shouting match with them. That wouldn't accomplish anything. No, I was going to hit them where it hurt most, their image, their precious little world of status and success. I wasn't a flashy guy. I wasn't a show-off. But I could play their game, and I could do it better than they ever could. For the next few weeks, I kept my head down. I didn't need to be in their face to make a statement. I didn't need to prove anything to them, not yet. Instead, I focused on the project that had been growing in the background. I took my time, refined it, and made it something bigger, something that would make their heads spin. But more than that, I started planting seeds. I made strategic connections with people they'd never expect me to have access to. I reached out to investors who were interested in something more than what Adam and his family thought of as the real deal. I made moves quietly, subtly, in a way that they wouldn't even notice until it was too late. Then, one day, the opportunity presented itself. Kelsey's family had invited us over again. This time, I wasn't just going to show up as the boyfriend. This time, I was coming as someone who had something to offer them, something that would shake their world up. When we walked in, I could feel the usual tension in the air. Linda and Frank were sitting at the head of the table, looking like they were expecting me to fail, expecting me to be the same guy they could push around. Adam was on his phone, barely acknowledging me, but I could see the arrogance still dripping from his every word. But this time, when I spoke, it wasn't with any uncertainty. It wasn't with the polite, trying to please tone I had used before. I had something they couldn't ignore. I started talking about the deal I had been working on. It wasn't just some small-time project anymore. It was a major partnership with one of the biggest players in the tech world. The kind of thing Adam would have killed to be a part of. The kind of thing that would make their family's wealth and status look pale in comparison. Kelsey's eyes widened as I dropped the details. She wasn't expecting it, and neither were her parents. Linda's face went from cold detachment to something a little more complicated. Was it jealousy? Anger? Maybe even a little bit of fear. Frank, on the other hand, just sat there, frozen. And Adam? He didn't know how to react. I let it sit in the air for a moment, watching the way they absorbed the information, the way the realization started to sink in. I wasn't just lucky anymore. I wasn't just the guy Kelsey was wasting her time with. I had become someone who was a real threat to their carefully constructed world. I could see the gears turning in Adam's head. He was already thinking of ways to worm his way into this new opportunity, to take some of the credit, to prove that he wasn't just the guy trying to live off his parents' money. But it wasn't going to be that easy. I had one more card to play. I turned to Kelsey, and without missing a beat, I said, I think it's time we start making our own plans. We've built something great together, and it's only going to get better from here. But it's not just about me. It's about us. And if you're ready to stop letting them control our lives, we can make our own way. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I could see the shock in Kelsey's eyes as she processed my words, her mind working to catch up with the shift that had just happened in the room. Her parents, too, were speechless. For the first time in years, I'd thrown their world into disarray. I wasn't just some background figure in their lives anymore. I was a force they couldn't ignore. Kelsey looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before, a flicker of realization. Maybe she hadn't fully understood the extent of what I'd been doing while she was stuck in the chaos of her family's expectations. Maybe she hadn't realized how much I had been quietly working to change the situation for us, for her. But then her eyes flicked to her parents, and the familiar conflict surfaced. I knew this was hard for her. The tug of war between wanting to be with me and not wanting to upset her family was always there, just beneath the surface. Frank was the first to break the silence, his voice low but edged with an unshakable authority. You think you can just take her and leave us behind? You think this is how things work? He glared at me, his fists clenched at his sides. You don't get to come in here, make your little deal, and act like you've won some kind of victory. Kelsey's not a prize to be claimed. She's our daughter. And if you think you can just take her from us, I'm not taking her, I interrupted, keeping my voice steady despite the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. She's made her choice. You don't own her, and you don't get to tell her what's best for her anymore. It's time for her to live her own life, and if you can't respect that, then maybe it's time to step back. I didn't want to come off as harsh, but I wasn't going to let Frank's words hit me like they had in the past. He was trying to manipulate Kelsey, trying to force her back into their mold, but I wasn't going to stand by and watch him do that to her. Linda looked almost insulted. You think she's better off with you? She sneered, her eyes narrowed. You think this whole tech thing is going to last? We've seen this happen before, time and time again. Men like you, ambitious but naive. You'll crash and burn, and where will she be then? With nothing. Her words stung, but they didn't have the power they once did. Kelsey was finally seeing them for what they were: fear, jealousy, and control. Kelsey's eyes flicked back to me, and then to her parents. There was a moment where I thought she might falter, that she might say something to soothe her family's bruised egos. But then she took a deep breath, looked her mother straight in the eye, and said, You've been trying to control my life for years. You've never respected my choices. But I'm not your puppet anymore. I'm with him, and that's not going to change. The words were simple, but they carried so much weight. For the first time, Kelsey wasn't just defending me. She was defending herself. Frank opened his mouth to respond, but then Adam, who had been quiet up until this point, stood up. His face was red, his jaw tight. He was clearly losing his patience. This is ridiculous, he spat, pacing around the room like a trapped animal. You're just going to throw everything away for this guy? He's not even your type, Kelsey. You're throwing away your future, your security, for someone who's just lucky. I saw Kelsey's jaw clench at Adam's words, but she didn't back down. She turned to him, her voice firm. You don't get to tell me what my future is. You've been living in your own little bubble, thinking you have it all figured out. But look where that's gotten you. She paused, letting the words sink in. You don't even know what real success looks like. You're just playing the game, hoping it works out. And guess what? It's not. I'm not going to let you drag me into your world of superficial success and empty promises. Adam's face twisted in rage, and I could see his frustration boiling over. You think you're better than me? He shot back, his voice rising. You think you're some kind of expert? I'll show you who's better. You'll come crawling back when everything falls apart. But Kelsey didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes unwavering. I'm not the one who needs to crawl. You've been riding on your parents' coattails for too long, Adam. I'm done with this. The room was so still, so thick with tension that it felt like the air was pressing down on all of us. The walls were closing in, and in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about my relationship with Kelsey. This was about Kelsey standing up for herself, breaking free from the suffocating hold her family had on her. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. Kelsey turned to her parents, her face set in determination. "I'm leaving. I don't know when or if I'll come back, but I won't be part of this anymore. You can't control me. I'm not your project to fix. I'm a person, and I get to choose my path." Her words were final. The room was silent as everyone absorbed what she had just said. Frank's face had gone pale, and Linda's expression had softened, just a little, but it was there. They could see that they had lost. Adam, though, looked like he was about to explode. But before he could say anything, Kelsey grabbed my hand. "Let's go," she said softly, her voice steady, but her eyes were full of emotion. As we walked out of that house, Kelsey's grip tightened around my hand. We didn't look back. We didn't need to. Her family had tried to tear us apart for too long, but now we were free. Over the next few weeks, things started to change. Kelsey moved in with me, and together, we focused on building our future without the weight of her family's expectations. Her parents didn't make contact for a while, but when they did, it was to offer some half-hearted apology, which we both ignored. Kelsey's family never really accepted me, but I didn't care anymore. They tried to manipulate, control, and belittle us, but we'd taken the power back. We had the life we'd wanted all along together, on our own terms. And as for Adam, he was still trying to play the part of the successful businessman, but his connections were falling apart. The investors he had been relying on weren't as impressed by him as he thought they would be. And slowly, the cracks began to show in his shiny exterior. Kelsey and I? We're doing better than ever. Her family doesn't get to dictate our happiness anymore. They'll never truly understand what we have, but that's fine with us.